This episode brought to you by MeepleRealty.com, your source for high-quality custom board game inserts. Meeple Realty, think inside the box. Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we're bringing you a redo of a top 10 list I did a while back. These are going to be the top 10 games that I don't have or haven't played, but really want to. And real quick, let me go over some of the stuff from the previous top 10. And actually, if you want to see that, I'll link it in the description below. It was a live event that I did with Asdrubal, who's the retro board gamer. Some of you might know from Board Game Blender, and also Georgie from Beards and Board Games, that YouTube channel. So real quick, out of the top 10 plus one, so 11 that I did last time, I actually managed to get 3 of them played. So only 3. Just kind of shows you there's just so many games out there. And also you're going to see that out of the ones that were left, out of the 8 that were left, only a few of those made it onto this top 10 plus one. So obviously the games that I want to play kind of shift and flow and everything. I didn't look at the old one when I was making the new one, so I was pretty surprised to see how few of them made it back onto this list. It doesn't mean that I don't want to play the games that didn't make it, but it's just that if you look at my wish list on Board Game Geek, which I keep very up to date, there's literally hundreds of games on that list. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much I want to play these games for them to make it into the top 11. Out of the ones that were on the previous list, the ones that I did finally get to play, I played Blood Rage. I've played it a couple times, love that game, don't own it yet, but I really do like that game quite a bit. And then that was my number 4 on the list last year. Xia, Legends of a Drift System was my number 2. I now own that game and love it. And in fact, the expansion that I kickstarted should be coming in hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months, maybe even as early as May. But really looking forward to getting my hands on that expansion. And then the number 1 game that I wanted to play last time but had not yet was Mage Knight. And now Mage Knight has become my favorite game of all time. Or I suppose there's maybe 1 or 2 games that kind of fight with it for favorite game of all time, but it's definitely up there in the top 3 at the very least. One other caveat for how the games would make the list or which games wouldn't make the list. There's going to be several games that I really, really want to play that aren't on this list, but that's because they are on their way. I've either kickstarted them, pre-ordered them, or what have you. And those games I disqualify from the list just because they are coming to me. It's not something where, I don't have it en route to me yet. I do have these games, so they will get played without a doubt. So games like Kingdom Death and Gloomhaven, those did not make the list despite the fact that they would have been number 1 and 2 on my list if I was not excluding those type of games. All right, so number 11 for the games that I want to play but have not is Atlantis Rising. This is a game that I probably won't get to, I definitely won't get to own it anytime soon. Probably won't even get to play it. It is an out-of-print game, very difficult to get a hold of. None of the people in my area that I know of have this game, and so because of that, I'm going to have to end up going to a convention or something like that to play it. This is a game that the board is laid out, and I believe has like almost a 6-spoked star is the kind of layout of the game, and it's essentially a worker placement game. But as you're playing, you're escaping Atlantis as it's sinking, and portions of the board, it's not modular in the sense that it's randomized, but modular in the sense that it's different pieces. And as Atlantis starts to sink, and as different things happen with the worker placement, you flip over the portions that are underwater, and then that is no longer accessible, and it limits your ability to complete the tasks that you're trying to do and get off of the island. So this is one that looks a lot of fun. I really love the way it looks, like just visually. And had I gotten into the hobby a little bit earlier, I would own this game. It's one that I really liked when I first got in the hobby in 2012. I wanted to buy it. I had no concept of games going out of print and how quickly that can happen. And Atlantis Rising, I believe, had just recently come out at that point, and I was going to get it. I knew that game's up on my list, going to get it soon. And then when I went to finally purchase it, it was already over, $150 on Amazon, and now it's somewhere in that range still, if not higher. So number 11 is Atlantis Rising. All right, number 10 on the list of games that I really want to play but haven't is Kingsburg. Now, this one is getting ready to have a second edition come out, so I think I may take first edition even off my wish list at this point, because generally speaking, recently at least, second editions have always improved the first edition. I can't remember a second edition coming out recently where somebody said, where most people said, I wish I like that first edition better. I know there's some first edition Descent players that prefer that over the second edition, and for good reasons. I understand, but for the most part, it seems like the second edition is more popular. With Mansions of Madness, the same thing. The second edition is more popular, other than the few people who miss being able to play the Keeper. Other games, I'm trying to think of some other. Point is, second editions recently and third editions have generally been accepted as improving upon their predecessor, and so for that reason I'm going to hold off on getting Kingsburg until the second edition comes out. And this is a dice placement game where you roll dice and then you allocate them to different people in the kingdom, all the way up to the king himself, and you're trying to as I understand it, prepare your portion of the kingdom, or your section that you're in charge of for the impending wave of enemies that are coming in. And you're building it up, and I don't know if it's a victory point game or exactly what the win condition is there, but you're playing against the other players, and generally it's a 3 and up game, though I believe there may be a 2-player variant. But I just love the whole idea of rolling the dice and figuring out the best way to place them out on the board. And when you're placing them, you're taking away options from your opponents. And it's one of those things where you can place the dice separate for lower numbers, or combine them together for higher numbers. And it looks like a lot of fun. And I liked a lot the artwork in the first edition, so I'm very interested to see what the second edition artwork is going to look like. That's Kingsburg, my number 10. Number 9 is Exodus Proxima Centauri. Now, other than Xia, I don't have any space games, and Xia is more of a if you were Han Solo, this one individual person on their own flying around the galaxy, or actually not the galaxy, flying around the solar system in the case of Xia, getting into trouble, completing missions, all this kind of stuff. Exodus Proxima Centauri, that is almost, I don't want to say civilization. I guess it is in a way. You're researching technology, you're building multiple ships, you have a fleet, you're spreading out. I believe it does qualify as a 4X game, and it's been described as, if you want to play something like Twilight Imperium, but you want to do it on a, in half the time, Exodus Proxima Centauri is your game. And I love the way, I love the idea of the technologies and building up, in different ways. Each player ends up taking different paths in that way, and making your ships better, exploring different areas, trying to figure out the best way to maximize your empire. Is that going to be to fully encroach into someone else's empire, or are you just going to build up your borders and try to explore to expand your empire? All that sounds like a lot of fun. This is a game I definitely want to get my hands on, and like I said, that Space 4X is definitely an area that my board game collection could use some expansion in. So my number 9, Exodus Proxima Centauri. Number 8 is Zombicide Black Plague. Now, all 4 of these so far are newcomers to the list. None of these were on the list last year. Zombicide Black Plague is on the list. Zombicide definitely did not make the list last year, and it's funny. I can't think of any other game where the idea of playing it was completely ruined for me by a single rule. But that's what Zombicide had done up until Black Plague, and that rule was that if you were going to fire a ranged shot into a crowd of zombies, and a friendly unit was in that crowd of zombies, you had to hit the friendly unit first. That rule never made any sense to me, completely ruined the idea of playing Zombicide for me, and for that reason, I never made any serious effort to get a hold of the game or play the game. They have fixed that rule in Black Plague. That's no longer the case. I believe I think it's if you miss when you're shooting at the zombies, then you hit your friendly unit. And that makes much more sense to me. I'm fine with that. That rule, it just makes sense. So, Zombicide Black Plague is now on there. The miniatures, of course, are amazing. This is from Cool Mini or Not. And, Zombicide is one of those games that really kind of brought forth the idea of having dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of really good-looking minis all in the same game for a relatively reasonable price. So Black Plague takes it out of the modern times back into the medieval times, and that seems like a really cool idea. There's not a whole lot of medieval zombie games, unless you include stuff with other sorts of undead characters in it. So Zombicide Black Plague is my number 8 most wanted to play game that I do not have or have not played. Number 7 is a game that was on the list last year. This is Robinson Crusoe. Now, last year it was also number 7, surprisingly enough. This game is basically you are Robinson Crusoe or some other members of the crew, and y'all are all on the island, been stranded there, and you are fighting against the elements, fighting against wild creatures, cannibals, pirates, whatever. And there's multiple different scenarios in the game that, some of them, as I understand it, follow along with the idea of the book. Others are completely unique to the game. And it is described as one of the hardest cooperative or solo games out there. That really appeals to me. I love really difficult solo and or cooperative games. The second edition of this just came out, going back to what I was talking about with Kingsburg earlier, and the second edition absolutely has improved on the first. The rule book is much better. The components have been adjusted to make more sense in certain areas. The box is adjusted so that it's a normal size, square box instead of the I believe it was a coffin size box before, or at least a rectangular box. So that fits better. Yeah, everything's a little bit better. So Robinson Crusoe Second Edition is definitely the one I'm looking to get now. Really want to play this game. However, I will say this, and first I was trying to figure out why First Martians didn't make my list, and that's because it's not out yet. First Martians would have been very high on my list, much higher than Robinson Crusoe, and so in all likelihood, I'll get First Martians prior to Robinson Crusoe. That is for those of you that don't know, First Martians comes from the same designer as Robinson Crusoe, uses many of the same mechanisms that Robinson Crusoe has, but you're on Mars. You are colonizing Mars. And supposedly it's all based in science. It's not, as far as how we understand science and everything, as opposed to science fiction. There shouldn't be, I don't believe there's any aliens or anything like that in First Martians. So all of that, it gives you this realistic survival game on Mars. Has an app involved as well, and I think that one I will acquire before I get Robinson Crusoe, just because they are similar, and yet First Martians looks like it takes it to the next level. But regardless of that, Robinson Crusoe is still my number 7 most wanted to play game. My number 6, going back to newcomers to the list, number 6 is Conan. Now, this is a miniatures heavy game, a combat heavy game. It is not a campaign game. It is absolutely you play individual scenario by individual scenario, and they do not interconnect. And sometimes that's refreshing to have that. Mansions of Madness was similar. There was no campaign there, so it wasn't like you had to keep a group together and work your way through something. You can just jump into this game and play it. It has a pretty interesting combat mechanism where you're using these gems, and the more you fight, I believe you become exhausted more and more. Then you have to rest to get the gems back. The gems represent your ability to do actions or something along those lines. And of course, the miniatures are fantastic. I will say that I do have some concerns over, not some concerns, I am concerned over some of the artwork that's in the game, some of the art choices. I know that it goes back with classic Conan material, but at the same time, I don't know that that's always a good excuse. That doesn't, I don't know. I want to get it, I want to try it out because of how cool the gameplay seems to be, but at the same time, we'll see if it ends up sticking around when I do get it, or we'll see if having to deal with that and knowing that, it's not something that I'm going to be bringing my kid into play anytime soon, that might actually prevent me from acquiring the game, but we'll see. Just from a complete gameplay point of view, though, Conan is my number 6 on this list. Number 5 is Scythe from Stonemaier Games, Jamey Stegmaier. This game is basically a post-World War I steampunk style game with mechs. And you say, holy crap, that sounds like a combat-heavy game. You'd be wrong. It is not a combat-heavy game, which some people were surprised by. But it is instead much more of a worker placement game. The mechs, there is some combat, though it's mostly abstracted out. And you're it's more area control and more worker placement. And you're moving around just trying to take over the board, get victory points, all this kind of stuff. There is a very cool technology track where, based on which faction you have, combined with something else, I can't remember, but the upper track and the lower track are kind of mix and match depending on who you've got, I believe. Either that or it just varies by faction. But definitely each faction will have a different upper track and lower track on their player mats for the technology. And as you research or unlock different technologies, the top affects the bottom and vice versa. It looks really cool. I think that's a very interesting idea for how that works, and it's definitely something that I want to look deeper into and get a better understanding of. And then, of course, the game is beautiful. The artwork is one of the things that initially drove this game into the mainstream, into the limelight, I think. And it still is something that I really want to get my hands on, just to look and see all the beautiful artwork on here. It's very seldom that a game is conceived based on artwork, and that's really what happened here, according to, I've heard interviews or read interviews where Jamey has said that that's what happened. He saw this artwork and then he started building the game around it. And that's pretty cool that the game was still able to be so amazing and be so popular, even though its inception was from the inspiration that Jamey received from that artwork. So that's pretty cool. My number 5 is Scythe. My number 4 is Century Spice Road. This is a game that just recently came out from Plan B Games. It was originally going to be a Plaid Hat game, but then for various reasons it's now Plan B game. And this, I'm hoping, will be a replacement in many ways for Splendor. My wife loves Splendor. I like Splendor. And I'm hoping the Century Spice Road will offer some more choices, be a little bit more gamery, for a better term, and provide a similar experience for her while a more interesting experience for me. And it has some great components. I love the block cubes that come with it that represent the different spices and stuff. And the artwork looks great, and it just seems like a really cool new entry into that style of gameplay, and I'm hoping to get my hands on it sometime soon. It's part of a trilogy. I don't understand how that's going to work, but it's, you guys, the Spice Road one now, I can't remember what the middle one is, and then the third one is going to be the New World, and that all seems very interesting. That clearly a Euro trading game. I mean, I don't know if it's technically a trading game, but that's generally what the theme is. But that's going to have a trilogy. That seems very interesting to me. So we will see how all that goes. And yeah, my number 4 is Century Spice Road. So I am going to stop there with Century Spice Road because this is going to be a continuation. On Saturday, which is tomorrow from the day that I'm recording this, we're going to be doing another one of our live shows Saturday morning. And on there, myself, Ilja, and Alina from Werfel Reviews will all be doing our top 3 games that we really want to play but have not played yet. And so you can join us over there. I'll put a link for that live video in the description below as well. Also, of course, if it's after the live show has aired, no problem. You can watch the recording afterwards. But head over there, take a look at it, see what my top 3 games were and what their top 3 games are as well. And I hope to see you there. And until next time, if you're bored online, bored offline.